folks, Chris Voss here from the chrisvossshow.com, the chrisvossshow.com. Kind of the blog post we want to share with you. We review all of the latest in social media and technology, cool tech, and this is from Verizon. This is the Droid Incredible 4G LTE. Now, we're pretty excited about this because we're welcoming Verizon to our review base. We now have all the major carriers that are sending us phones to review, and so we're excited to review their cool phones that they have and do comparison videos with the other phones that you'll see on the Chris Voss Show channel. So be sure to tune into all that. Anyway, we're going to get on with the review of this exciting new phone. Cool. Okay, so let's unbox this puppy. I've been really excited to try the Verizon phones because they make some really cool phones. The Droid line, of course, by HTC is very popular. So we've been excited to get the chance to really benchmark their phones against other ones. Now, this is a production this is a phone that we've gotten through the PR department, so it's our unboxing here. It's not going to quite look like your conventional unboxing with the same sort of stickers and screen protectors that will come with the phone and everything else. So you may notice a little difference there, but all the while, it's an excellent phone, and we'll check it out. So looks like we have the phone there itself. It's a very good-looking phone. It's got Beats audio, as you can see here. I like the design of the front and back. Those are my initial first impressions. It's got a really cool kind of ergonomic. See how that ridge sits there? And we'll get into this more later, but I like it. It's got a nice rubberized feel in the back that gives you a good grip. We'll go ahead and set the phone aside for a second. We'll see what else they give us in the box from Verizon. Looks like we've got the start here, basically your user's manual and guide and all that good stuff. Let's get into the back. Looks like we've got a really classy looking plug that you can take and use, and of course it's got your USB plug-in to plug into the wall. Looks like we've got most likely a micro USB connector to go ahead and charge your device. It's so funny, I've gotten used to just plugging these things into my computer, and that's how we charge all of our phones. We don't even bother plugging them in anymore. Here you would have the normal card that you would use for your SIM card, and it looks like it has some quick reference guides in there, and then this is probably the SIM card punch out and all that good stuff. And of course this is already in our phone, so fun is fun. And it looks like that's pretty much it for what's in here. It's all about the phone. Okay, so now let's go ahead and light this up and see this puppy run. Now this is going to be available through VerizonWireless.com. That's VerizonWireless.com. You can see it has that cool Droid element to it that's really neat. In fact, the notifications will be, as you get notifications, it will say Droid. So it's really cool if you've seen the commercial about enough times for all the cool Droid commercials they make out there. It has the HTC, of course, ring pull to pull this out of standby. You can also drag in icons into the ring to take and pull the icons open when you want to take and utilize them in pulling it out of standby mode. Now, you can see here it's got your standard Android screen. It's got a finite scroll to it. You can add all sorts of different widgets, customize your layout, make different folders, all that good stuff that you can normally have with most Android products. You can see here you can add panels, adjust widgets, all that good stuff. So it's a great little toy that way when it comes down to it. You can hear some of the updates, of course, that it's given to me. Now let's run through the details on this. What you're looking at is it's a 4G LTE phone, and Verizon says they have the largest 4G LTE network in the nation and more spots for it. Its dimensions are 4.82 in height, 2.4 in length, and 0.46 in thickness depth. The weight is 4.6 ounces. It has a 4-inch Super LCD screen with QHD. Its battery is a 1700 milliamp battery. Usage time is 574 minutes. Standby is 447 hours. The memory processor that's in it is a 1.3 gigahertz dual-core Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 processor with a 1.0 gigabyte RAM, and it has an 8 gigabyte internal memory, which is pretty fast, and it supports up to 32 gigabytes micro SD card that you can take and plug into the back. So very cool that way. Let's take a look. We'll flip this over the back here so you can kind of see it. We'll get into some of the details here in a bit. It has an 8 megapixel rear facing camera with autofocus. It's It's got a VGA front-facing camera. It's got 1080p camcorder on the rear. Video formats, of course, are supported. And it also has the Beats audio. You can see the Beats audio logo that we have there. But we'll get into some more details of the front and back of this as we go through it. Now, you can see here that once we go into the apps area, it's a left to right flow on the apps area. It has pretty much all the latest software on it when it comes to Ice Cream Sandwich. It's running on a 4.03 Ice Cream Sandwich update. I don't know if it'll update to 4.04, but that would be really cool, or Jelly Bean. But we'll see what happens in the future. Stay tuned. The one thing it also has is HTC Sense UI on it, which is 4.0, the version that we have. You can see here the notifications, drop-down menu, how that's looking and working. Pretty much standard operating procedure with Android 4.03, if you're very familiar with it. Down here we have our back button, our home button, which will take us to home, and our most recent apps button that will show us recent apps we've taken and utilized. So it's got pretty much all the standard stuff you have on Android. You can see here across the top we have a speaker for your calls. We have a front-facing camera, of course, also. So that gives you some details and some rundowns as to how the device operates and works, and let's get into some more of it. Okay, so here we can see the bottom of the device. On it, you can see there's a small microphone hole. Everything's black here. So, and then it also has a pull space where the back can pull off. We'll show you how that works here in a second. Here we have the top of the device. We have the power switch and a small microphone hole and the earphone plug. Okay, so now going down the left side, you can see here that pretty much all we have is a nice sleek side, and we have a place for the charger to be able to be plugged in and synced, of course, with your computer and all that good stuff. So that's all we have on the left side. Down the right side, we just have a very discreet rocker button. It's very thin, almost not there. The nice thing about the Droid is it's all black, and so a lot of the features kind of disappear into it on the body, but it has a really classic shiny look on the front, and then it has a nice plastic, I don't want to say plastic, rubber actually is what's on the back. We'll show you that. Okay, now here you can see the back of the HTC, and it has a rubberized back. In fact, it's a very kind of thick feeling rubber. It's got the Beats audio here. It's got a small microphone right up here, or not a microphone, a speaker, if you will. And then it's got a camera eye and, of course, the flash. One thing that's interesting is that the build. I like this grid that's on the back. It makes it very easy to hold and gives you some grip so you don't have the presence to drop it. These outer areas actually work really well when you're holding the phone. You can see here when I flip this over that this works as a great area to keep a hold on the phone so it doesn't get away from you, and so does the other outer parts of this holder. So part of it's an ergonomic effect, if you will, to be able to give you a better grip on the phone and make it very comfortable in the hand. It's got a rubberized back to it. We notice when we're using it for long periods of time, we're probably using it for more people with the screen on when we're doing recording. We notice it did get a little bit warm on us. So this thing does process a lot of data and really rock and roll. It wasn't too bad when it came down to it, but we did notice that the rubber, I think the rubber kind of takes in some of the warmth on the back and holds the heat. Here you can see the back of it. It's got, of course, a removable battery. There's a small place here where you can see you insert your SIM card, and then right here is the micro SD plug that you can take and plug in your micro SD card to expand your memory. Okay, so now speed test wise, you can see how this fared. Now we do have the Wi-Fi on right now, but we're using the results log that we have in speed test. So we did this with the Wi-Fi off and got a measurement from Verizon Wireless Mobile System. Verizon Wireless, of course, claims to have the largest 4G LTE network in the nation, and in more markets, I guess, than anyone else. So you can see some of the results we got. Very good for download and upload speed. We pretty much ran these in a series back to back. So we got great speed, and we'll show you the hotspots. Now, hotspots a major factor when it comes to service and everything else. It's blazing. Blazing is the correct word. Blazing fast when it works off of the LTE 4G network with Verizon. We hooked this up to an iPad 3. Now, an iPad 3 is a humongous data sucker. So it gives us a great benchmark test for bringing down a lot of data, pushing a lot of data, et cetera, et cetera. You can see here the upload's really, really good when it comes to upload speeds. Download, very good. And so it performed exceptionally well on the hotspot tests. One thing we did notice, though, with the hotspot tests is we had it plugged into a charger at the time we were testing the hotspot. We did notice that a warning came up that said it could not charge at the pace we were processing data. Now, we were using a huge data suck, which is the iPad 3, and other devices aren't going to take as much data as this because this brings in some really high density data. So, given that was something we ran into, you definitely want to make sure it's charged if you're going to take it onto a hotspot device, because it looks like it will perform very well. Given, I don't think that's a negative because it's working really that hard, and from what we've seen in the processing benchmarks, what you're going to see the processing benchmarks, it's a performer of a phone. So it definitely is going to use up a lot of data and rock and roll. The iPad actually, as this performer as well, it has the same problem where if you're using high density programs and games, it will not charge to keep up with the pace that you're using it. It's an indication of good performance. Okay, so using the AnTuTu benchmark 2.9.2, you can see here this scored 6,019 on its score. You can see some of the RAM, CPU integer, CPU flow points, 2D graphics, 3D graphics, measurements it took and did. 6,000 score is a really great score to take and get on an Android device, so it's very great. Okay, so here you've seen we've done a quadrant standard test. You can see the device scored very well at the top of the charts, 4105. Score up against the HTC One X and the Asus Transformer TF2 that came in above. And of course it came in above a whole lot of other devices that were out there. You can see here some of the stats in the CPU, memory, etc., all that sort of good stuff. And that can give you some benchmarking you can use against phones that you have that you're currently taking a look at. Okay, so using Geekbench 2, you can see here the Geekbench score came in as a great score at 1347. Integer-wise came in at 848, 1915 for the floating point. Memory 1608, and of course we haven't expanded the memory in here. Stream is 586. And so you can see here as we page down the system information, 1.24 gigahertz Qualcomm processor, Android 4.03, integer performance 848. You can see some of the breakdowns here. Of course, the great thing, you can compare this to apps you may download on a device you have already. Floating point performance, you can see here how each of the different spectrums that they take and use to benchmark these broke down. And finally coming in with memory performance and stream performance. So very cool, and it performed very well compared to many Android devices. It scores in the top. Okay, so now looking at the passmark performance test, you can see here we got a score of 1884 on the system. Paging down on the CPU test, we got a score of 4467. Disk test 2594, 2414 on the memory test, and 2228 on the 2D graphics test, and on the 3D graphics test 604. So very interesting on how the test came out there. Okay, so now we're doing a GPS status GPS finding of satellites test. And what this does is gives us an idea as to how many satellites the device will tend to pick up. There's of course satellites floating all over the world, and also how accurate it can get into the closest of feet. This is pretty standard to get within 10 feet of a device, and most devices will be about that measurement. It's using about 19, 20, 18 different satellites it's picking up, and of course using about 11 of them to get us these details. So it's a very great phone when it comes to GPS measurement standards and picking up the satellites. Okay, this is the billion counter test, where what we do is we test to see how fast the CPU can count to 1 billion. And you can see here that it did it in a fast 30.318 seconds. That's very fast for an Android phone. Very good. Okay, so now we can see here how well the device works using the KFS benchmark. Bamboo-wise, it came in at frames per second of 58.55. Wavescape came in at 58.5. Galactic Core 25.95, and overall a 41.266 score. So very great on frame rate per second performance. Okay, so using the GL benchmark 2.1.5 Egypt standard, this thing came in at 6505 frames at 58 frames per second. So it's a great score when it comes to being able to process data and graphics. Okay, so here we have the AND-E bench that we've taken use to get us a benchmark of the native and Java threads and how they run. And of course, the great thing about these apps is you can compare them to your phone that you currently have by downloading them off the Android store. So you can see here that it performed with 4,156 native threads, and in the Java it performed with 145 measurement. Okay, so here you can see we're doing a test. We're doing a Skype call using Wi-Fi. This is a localized Wi-Fi, and you can see here the video comes out really well across on my iPad 3 that we're receiving the video on. So it's got a great front-facing camera. It plays really good detail on the feedback that's coming from the other device. So you can see here it performs very well in face-to-face Skype and calls that you might make with video in your front-facing camera. Does a really good job. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're testing the camera, the front-facing camera, with a Skype video call, and in this case we are using the T-Mobile network. So we're using not a localized Wi-Fi as we were before, but we're using the T-Mobile network, and you can see here the feed comes out. You can almost see it the same coming out across our system that we're taking using here. So it plays the video that's coming from a source very well and portrays it very well over here. So you can see here the front-facing camera does a great job. Okay, now, so this has your pretty much your standard Android operating system, especially the 4.03 or HTC software. If you've taken and seen it, you have the ability to control, of course, up here your flash and all that good stuff. The indicator light's not coming on because they have the battery low. You have your settings button that you can take and hit. You have access to your camera, front, back, self-timer, image resolution changes you want to make, video quality, of course, you can adjust up and down. The review duration of image adjustments that you want to take and make to the quality of the image. You can adjust exposure and all that good stuff. Let's take a look at a few others. Let's see, ISO, white balance. The real nice thing about the Android line, of course, you have a whole lot more customization of the camera than you do with other OSs. Camera options here, you can see autofocus, face detection, smile, capture, camera, all that sort of good stuff. Let's take a look at, you've got auto upload if you want to take and do this, camera interface where you've got grid, shutter, different video options you may have for video stabilization, different camera options. I think we covered that. So you have all that available to you there. There's different basically camera scenes that you can take and pre-program into the phone so that you can get different lighting scenarios and stuff like that. You can choose HDR, panorama, portrait, group portrait, whiteboard, low light, close-up, etc., etc. And the camera will adjust itself to what it needs to do. You've got a zoom here, in and out, and then you also have the feature of where you have the ability to add different effects. Now, the great thing about these effects is they'll show up real time in the camera so that you can get an idea as to how the effects will look when you do your shot. So, and of course, you can change these to however you want to take and do that. You can, of course, focus by touching anywhere on the screen so that you can get the subject you want to focus. You also have a shutter button for your camera and then a video button which activates your video. Let's take a look at some of the camera shots that we did. Okay, so now let's take a look at the camera shots that we got out of the HTC camera. It seems to be compliant with a lot of the different rear cameras that we see in the HTC product line, especially the HTC One product line. You can see here it takes great sharp photos, great detail, all that good stuff. One thing we have noticed, like I mentioned with the HTC cameras, is the ones of late have kind of jacked up the yellow, blues, and greens in the photos. You can see a picture here, and we use this as a way to show you what happens in certain environments. You can see here, and this is much more defined on the actual camera itself. It's coming through very differently, but the greens come through very thick on here, and of course the floor looks very yellow when this is actually more of a brown color. Now we find that with most of the HTC One phones, they do that, and the reason that we presume that they do that is because it makes your photos you take in other environments much more brighter. The images pop with yellow, blues, greens popping out. The challenge is when you get into an environment like this, where it's dominated by yellows, blues, and greens, it tends to overrun the camera. So this is one of the reasons that we use this as a test. You can see it's got great detail on the floor. It takes great pictures. You can adjust some of these settings out by going into the customization and everything else. Is it bad? We don't think so. But definitely you want to be aware of it when you go into a yellow, blue, and green environment. Here once again the video, and this is another thing that kind of surprised me on the video. The aperture area that it takes video, it wasn't as wide as some of the other areas that we've seen with other cameras. But it still takes great video, and there's no problem there. You can still see great detail in the shot. Here's a low light shot, and it performed really well with the low light shot and flash shots. Very impressive. This will take a second to kick into gear with the lamp, but you can see here it does a great darken low light shot. You can see the image very well. It doesn't have any problem getting it light up and being able to see detail. Same thing with the flash. It takes a great flash photo. You can see here very well in detail. Now this is a flash in low light, I should say, where we're taking it, and this is almost a darkened image here. You can see great detail on the bike, everything else. This is a great shot for a low light shot. Colors come in really rich, so it performs really well in low light, which was very impressive, and it performs in normal light just as well. So we really like the camera. Very impressive. HTC is building a good one. Okay, so wrapping things up, we really like the device. Of course, it has your Beats audio. When you plug in your headphone, it will play the enhanced Beats audio music enhancement for you. I really like the Beats audio enhancement and the way it plays the music. Some people don't. You can turn it on or off as you like. It's a really great device, super fast, super rock and rolling. Even for a 1.2 gigahertz processor, there seems to be a lot of speed to the device, and it really jams. Of course, you've got the LTE network, 4G through Verizon wireless, which definitely has some real rocking speeds, as you saw. I love the device too because it's very good looking. It's got a beautiful shiny outside to it and top on the front, and then the back has this beautiful rubber that makes it very easy to grab. It feels good in the hand. It feels like a high quality heavy duty phone. It doesn't feel cheap or plasticky in any sort of way. So I really like that about the phone. It takes, of course, great pictures. You have the Android software. You have the HTC software. Overall, I really, really like the phone. So I'd highly recommend it. Chris Voss tested, Chris Voss approved. Be sure to go to VerizonWireless.com. That's VerizonWireless.com. There'll be a link below the video on the ChrisVossShow.com. Tell them Chris Voss sent you. Be sure to check out the phones. They're definitely worth it and well built, and I really, really like them. So thanks for coming by the ChrisVossShow.com. Be sure to check back often.